Left in Kentucky, the podcast of indivisible Northern Kentucky. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Left in Kentucky.
Woo, it's still January.
Woohoo! Well, it's January when we're recording this, but when you listen to it, it will be the future.
Right. And, you know, my bingo card is still kind of empty. I mean, there's a few already crossed off and it's only January. So, you know, who knows what tomorrow will hold. So let's just celebrate still being January.
Yeah, there you go. So with us this week, we have me, Roberto Henriquez.
And myself, Amy Ferguson.
And once again, we are Anless. We are so sad to be Anless again.
We are, and we wish her swift recovery.
Yep. We love you, Anne. We miss you terribly. Come back soon.
Mm-hmm.
So
you are with us in heart and soul.
Yep, definitely. So let's see. It's been pretty quiet. You know, there's been no insurrections in the past week.
You know, Joe's been busy though. He's been, you know, cranking out those EOs.
Yeah,
putting some stuff right.
You won't believe what he tweeted last night. Nothing.
I wouldn't know. You know me. I'm not on social media.
He didn't tweet anything last night.
You know, he probably played with his dogs or something.
Probably. Oh, I love the first dogs.
I do too.
Awesome.
Like they look like good poopers. Better than mine.
Oh, Rocky.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey.
Don't badmouth Rocky. I love Rocky.
I do too. He's my dog, but he goes astray every once in a while. Gets a little excited.
We're talking about Rocky, Amy's dog, not Rocky.
It's my dog. We're talking
representative.
About. He's a canine. Canine American.
Oh,
it's nice to have someone in the White House that actually has pets. That was one thing about that orange juice enema that really made me worry about what he could do.
That's a rough way to get your vitamin C, man.
It is. Hey, you know.
Oh, so let's see. How about we get into our cow
step in it
this week?
Yeah. Deliciously soft.
I smell the aroma coming. So let's see who you got up for us this week. Hopefully, somebody different.
Well, you know, I'm tempted to do the whole horrific GOP. But you know, we only have so much time on this podcast. So, but you know, I was thinking about it, you know, Roberto, how much I love my D&D and playing D&D. And I was thinking about alignment, and those who play will know what I mean. And how the GOP seems to be sort of splitting along an alignment track where you have the chaotic evil versus the lawful evil. And you know how we used to do on this podcast, well, is it just evil or stupid? Which one? Right. You know, I think they've all really gone over to the evil side for the sake of evil. But some are being a little more lawful and sneaky about it. And some are being a little bit more chaotic, you know. Crap is throwing green. But for my pick this week, I'm going to go for the lawful evil side this time. I've been talking Rand Paul every time, but let's talk about our other senator, one that is no stranger to the cow field, our own Mitch McConnell. Oh, Mitch, you know, you gave me a glimmer of hope there. Right after the January 6th insurrection, you gave some blame to the former occupant in the White House. You threw some shade that way, and you know it's richly deserved, of course. But we were surprised to see it. But wow, you know, after a few weeks, you just kind of turned that boat around, didn't you, Mitch? You know, Too many people were complaining that
he slinked right back to his
he abandoned that orange juice fella.
The turtle came out of the mud for a minute and went right back.
He did. He popped his head out of that shell. But even the GOP in Kentucky, they voted on a resolution, I believe, to censor him about that, or to send some kind of message to him about that, some kind of useless thing they were doing.
No, they were asking him to they were going to ask him to resign. It was a motion to ask him to resign.
Yeah, and they did vote it down. They didn't go overboard, but I think this chaotic side is starting to put a little more pressure on these lawful evil dudes. They know how to play the system. They're not going to break the law. They're just going to break all ethics laws, maybe, but no actual laws if they can avoid it, or they're not going to talk about it when they do it. So in a way, I can understand why Mitch is like trying to kind of appease these people a little bit, because they crazy.
Yeah,
who knows what they might do.
They might start an insurrection.
They're a little crazy. So who knows? He said that he wants to hear this evidence in the new impeachment trial, and that's good. He wasn't singing that song in the last impeachment, but
railroaded that right through.
Since he's minority leader now, maybe he thinks he might have to.
Wait. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Yes. Roll it around on your tongue
nicely.
Yes. I mean, he can still come up with a major patty, but, he's minority leader now. So, yes, for my cow patty this week, it is our own Senator Mitch McConnell. And, I have this feeling in my heart that next weekend it might just have to switch to my chaotic evil friend. I don't know. Somebody on that side.
There's still plenty of time for somebody else to come up.
And that split in the GOP,
Yep.
It's a shame, but you love to see it. They gave a room for these crazy people in their party. And it's just snowballed on them.
Yep.
And they deserve everything they get.
Yeah, it's so that's good. That's a well-deserved cow patty. Good job with that one. It's funny you mentioned that complete nut job Green, whatever her name is, from Georgia. She from Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, from Georgia. The one who talked about Jews in space have lasers that started the forest fires in California.
I know the logic escapes me, but
you could go, okay, well, that's weird, but if you've ever watched Spaceballs,
I have.
I think it's in space. Is it in? No, it's History of the World Part 1. At the end of History of the World by Mel Brooks, they talk about the sequel, and in the sequel, there's going to be a segment called Jews in Space. And that's immediately what I thought of when I heard this crazy woman say that.
That's so funny. The first thing that I thought of was Real Genius with Val Kilmer, where they have the space laser and they pop all the popcorn in the dean's house or whatever.
Yep.
That's the first thing I thought of.
That's a good one too. So, but in spite of that, I was really close to having that be my cow patty today. But in the midst of my preparation this morning, one of a number of preparations this morning, so we shall call it Preparation H.
I hope your itching is better.
No, my itching got worse.
Oh.
So my cow patty is going to an unnamed, an individual that I know the name of, but I'm not going to name, because it's not a public persona. It's not technically a public persona. Ooh.
That was Chewbacca agreeing with you.
So this morning there was a discussion going on, And I will say that in the course of this discussion, my name came up, and the person in this discussion who does not know me, or at least I don't know them, never heard of them, made the statement that they did not believe that I was Latino, that I have a Spanish sounding name, but I'm definitely not Latino.
Wow.
So this person gets my cow patty. So
Did he sneak into your house and steal your DNA?
Yeah. So let's break this down a little bit. Being Latino, it has to deal with your heritage. It is not a race. It's not like Caucasian or white or black or Asian. It's not a race.
Right.
It is an ethnicity, and it has to do with your familial heritage.
Sure.
So my father was born in Venezuela, in South America. He was born in Venezuela. I was born in the United States. I am most certainly Latino.
Right.
Now, people often look at me, and I get this all the time, which is pretty offensive. You don't look Latino. What does that mean?
Right.
That means that I don't look with these particular, the person in question speaking thinks a Latino should look like.
Right.
So that means, South America was colonized by Europeans just like North America was colonized by Europeans.
Sure.
So there are lots of people in South America who have mostly, if not all, European background before they got to South America. Just like there's a lot of people in North America that have European background and little, if any, indigenous
Sure.
North American heritage in them. So this idea that people in South America look all the same way, and because I don't look what somebody thinks a Latino should look like means I'm not really Latino, or because I don't speak Spanish fluently means I'm not really a Latino. It's really insulting and really infuriating. And when it comes from somebody who is in the Democratic tent, and I will just say that this is, somebody who considers themselves a Democrat, making this assertion, that is really, really upsetting and really concerning. So I felt the need to bring it up and issue my cow patty.
Well deserved. I mean, we talk about systemic racism and sort of throw that term around a lot, especially lately, which is good. We need to start having more conversations about it. But it's often like, oh, well, it's that side that's doing it. We're not racist. We're liberal. But the thing about it being systemic is that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there everywhere, even in your liberal groups, even within your same ethnic group, maybe, so yeah, I think it's very important for you to call out that kind of thing. It's like somebody from South Africa, they're an African.
Mm-hmm.
But someone might look at them and say, well, you're white, you can't be an African. It's like, no, I'm from Africa,
Yeah.
And people tend to have trouble breaking out of their stereotypes. And it's up to us to kind of mix up those stereotypes a little bit, especially because, we're such a melting pot here in America. We are such a rich mixture of so many cultures and backgrounds and experiences, and we can learn so much from each other, that for someone to without provocation, accuse you of not being something is really not useful in any way whatsoever. It's not building up anybody. It's not building bridges. It's not doing anything, but, making further divisions. So kudos for calling that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And like I said, it's, like you're saying, we're all such a mixture of so many backgrounds. I mean, I've got, French and English and Scottish and Irish and North African. And I mean, I've got all sorts of, I'm a mutt, right?
Yeah. I'm a mutt too.
And
hey, mutt. And my dog just came in here.
I mean, most Rocky, beautiful Rocky.
Stinky Rocky.
Stinky Rocky. Yeah. But we're all mutts. Most of us are mutts, not everybody, but most of us are mutts and have a mixed background of where we came from. But Latino and Hispanic are very specific terms. Words have actual meanings.
Yeah.
These words have actual meanings.
Sure.
And it has to do with where your family heritage is. And, Latino.
And if you don't know people, ask. Well, don't be afraid to ask someone, hey, what's your background, or, where's your family from? Be interested about people's background, and don't assume anything about anyone.
And it can be difficult. It's, there's a lot of overlap between Latino and Hispanic. Like a lot of the South American and Central American countries, as well as Mexico, which is actually part of North America.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shock for some people I know out there, but, Latino and Hispanic takes those in, but Latino also includes the people of Brazil and South America, whereas Hispanic doesn't include the people of Brazil,
mm-hmm.
but it includes the people of Equatorial Guinea, people in Spain.
Right.
And then when you say somebody's Spanish, that refers specifically to Spain.
Right.
Somebody whose family heritage is from Spain. And I don't expect everybody to appreciate the subtleties or between those terms. But to look at somebody who says that they're Latino or says that they're Hispanic and accuse them of not having that heritage without knowing them is
problematic.
Yeah, problematic. It's problematic. And it's really insulting and really hurtful. And for somebody like me, it really gives me this sense of, not white enough to be white, not brown enough to be brown. So I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I have no heritage that I can claim. And that's not right. And
No.
that should not be for other people to decide or sit in judgment over.
And, I just want all our listeners, I know a lot of you are, you're liberal, you're progressives, and you're shaking your head, oh, that's horrible. And, oh, I would never do something like that. But if you think long and hard, you probably have.
Yeah.
And not even realized it. So just be thoughtful and mindful. And if you don't know, ask. The same thing with, sexual orientation or how people identify. I mean, people would rather just be, hey, I don't understand what's going on. Can you explain it to me? Or I'm not sure how I should address you. Just explain, instead of trampling over their identity. Show that you care about, hurting their feelings and being respectful of how they see themselves.
Yep. All right. So enough on that.
Enough preachy.
Yeah, enough
Preaching,
preachy.
Gigi.
Let's move on to our bullhorn. And,
we have a award.
Yes, we have a bullhorn. Our bullhorn this week goes to the Reddit folks on the Wall Street?
Wall Street bets.
Wall Street.
I love me some Reddit.
So for those who haven't heard or aren't quite sure what happened, maybe heard something about it or something about Robinhood, folks on this subreddit decided that they were tired of hedge funds driving companies out of business and making money
Mm-hmm.
on driving companies out of business, especially when they went after GameStop, which is a retailer that sells video games and video game consoles, and is fairly popular among Reddit followers.
I would say that is exactly true.
So they got together and started buying the stock to drive the price up. The hedge funds had bought short sale, which is a method of manipulating the market that hedge funds have used for years to drive
Make money off people's failures is what it is.
To drive a company out of business and make money out of it as they drive them out of business. And so the everyday investors drove the price up from, it was like $17 a share, and it went up to like, what was it, like
crazy,
$230 a share or something like that.
Yep.
The hedge fund managers got very upset and started complaining about these folks manipulating the market.
We're the only ones that are supposed to be able to do that.
Exactly. And then we had, there's an app that is fairly popular with younger traders, millennials, called Robinhood, that they use it's just an app that's used to trade shares. And they decided to shut down trading on GameStop and what was the AMC, because they started listening to the hedge fund managers,
right?
The hedge fund managers to get mad at them. So,
well, hopefully this spurs some legislation, get some regs on these hedge funds. It's people playing with companies to make money, and it's just the human factor is completely cut out. It's all a game to these hedge fund managers, and obviously none of it's kind of real. You know, the Redditors inflated this price. It wasn't real, and you can say, hey, what are we doing here? People really need money. Our company is hurting, or our country is hurting, but we're letting these companies just play with billions of dollars like it's nothing. It's just, something's got to give.
Yeah, definitely.
And kudos to Reddit for sticking a thorn in their side.
Yeah, hopefully we'll, hopefully Elizabeth and Bernie will get on the job here and kind of start putting some guardrails out there for these.
Be nice
funds.
To see.
Yep. So that's our bullhorn.
Woohoo!
Keep up the good work, and I may have to start following that Reddit.
Yeah, like I said, I've followed it a while now, just because it was kind of a fun little subreddit. But of course I'll trade, or anything like that. But I was sorely tempted that day. I was like,
I trade a little bit. I put maybe $1,500 in the stock market, and just to kind of play around with and see. I did this, I don't know, 4 years ago, I think. I just kind of put a little bit out of my each paycheck for like a year. And one of the stocks that I bought 4 years ago was Zoom.
Yeah. That was smart.
Yeah. So
that made a little money on that one.
Yeah, that one was a good one. We won't talk about all the other ones that I bought that went down. I'm just going to talk about Zoom that went up. So anyway, it's like they say, don't put any money in it that you aren't willing to lose.
Right.
because it is risky. And trust me, I've lost money, but I did make money on Zoom. So
I don't even like playing the lottery or going to a casino. So
yeah, I don't
stock
either.
market is not my thing for sure.
Yeah. I'm not big on casinos, but I was like, let me give it a shot. And it's been okay. I go in there every now and then and buy something and sell something. And I will say that it gave me a much better understanding of how the stock market works.
Well, that's good.
And how that affect, how that can affect companies, and how you can make money and how you can lose money, and how much of it's out of your control. So when I hear different things happening at companies, different reports, on the news, I do feel like I have a better understanding of that.
You should definitely follow Wall Street Bets.
Yeah.
But hey, just your opinion on something that has recently come up in the news, tangentially related to this. How do you feel about members of Congress that trade stocks? I find this very problematic.
Yeah, that's a real conflict of interest. I don't think members of Congress should be able to.
I think they should be forced to buy just U.S. bonds if they're going to invest in the country itself.
Yeah, I think any stocks that they own, before they go into Congress, I think those should be held for them
in trust. Yeah,
in trust. And I really don't think they should be allowed to trade while they're in office, because they have way too much control over what happens to companies and what happens to the market, and can really talk about market manipulation, can really manipulate the market.
And they'll have the inside track, a lot of times, we saw this with COVID,
Mm-hmm.
Senators knew, and both sides of the aisle, they took advantage of it. So yeah, I would like to see something put forward about that. That seems kind of important.
I think so too. Give me a minute. I'm going to go email Bernie and Elizabeth right now.
Set it off.
With us now on Left in Kentucky is State Representative Rachel Roberts, representing District 67 in Northern Kentucky. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Thank you. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Amy. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you're getting ready to go back into session after your break.
Indeed. Yeah. I head down tomorrow for a prep day, and then we're back on the House floor on Tuesday.
Nice. So I'm sure during this break, you've just been hanging out at the hot tub and yoga and just kind of taking it easy, right?
Yeah, I've just basically been meditating and stretching for the last 2 weeks. No.
Good.
I did, in all fairness, I did get to teach a couple classes at my studio, which was nice.
Okay.
I am newer to being a rep. I've been a very long time yoga teacher and facilitator. So whenever I get to be in the studio, it's a real treat to me. So I was grateful for that.
Oh, good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the prepping for going back into session and kind of what that's like, and maybe what we can look forward to going back in this week.
Well, I'll start by just telling you how unusual this year has been already. I mean, COVID notwithstanding, generally in a short year, in a 30-day session like this year, we'll come together for 4 days, and those tend to be admin days and a chance for new legislators to get to meet one another, learn the ropes. And usually no laws are passed, no bills make it all the way through in those first 4 days. However, this year is very different. Many rules were suspended in the House to make it so that bills could pass through much more quickly. And as a result, several bills actually came all the way through, and we extended that 4-day session, or rather the leadership extended that 4-day session to 8 days. So in a 30-day session, we've already used up 8 of them, and we've passed some really large and impactful bills. I will tell you that every bill that has already gone through, I voted no on. They are largely designed to take away powers from the executive branch in the middle of a global pandemic, to weaken the executive branch, which in my opinion, hasn't done everything perfectly, as no one would under these circumstances, but has saved innumerable lives in Kentucky. And I think overall really led from a place of compassion and care and wisdom. And I think this is not a time for us to jump ship in the middle of something that seems to be working so well, especially in comparison with our neighboring states.
Agreed.
Also, two of the bills that they passed were healthcare bills, except they had nothing to do with COVID, and they truly had nothing to do with healthcare. They're just aimed at further restricting women's access to healthcare. So those were priority bills that came through already, which is insane to me that in this moment of a global pandemic, we didn't immediately pass healthcare bills that say, for instance, make telehealth the standard moving forward, because it has been such a lifeline for so many people right now. Or that we didn't say pass a mental health bill, which is so vitally important right now. And I hope we have more time to talk about here in a little bit. So, so we've already had those 8 days. We then took a 2-week break. And in that 2-week break, I really spent my time researching the bills that are likely to come through the committees that I sit on, and then also working on some more bills that I will be filing in the next week or so. And a couple of those are really big bills. So it was a lot of work, a lot of time meeting with the policy writers and various other stakeholders just to try and get those right. And, I understand that I am in a hyper minority. And that in the Kentucky GOP right now, leadership doesn't like to let Democratic sponsored bills be hurt. I understand that truth. But I also think that I have this opportunity to write really good bills, because there's this funny thing that happens when Democrats write good bills that have a lot of support behind them. A year or two later, a Republican will pick them up like it was theirs all along and pass it through. And I would never want a bill that started with me to get passed 2 years down the line that had a problem with it that I could have fixed when I was the one drafting the bill. So I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that I get these bills right, that I think about, the consequences to others down the line. And so that's really what I've spent the bulk of the last 2 weeks doing.
That's great. That's really refreshing, because as we've seen in the past, and specifically the past few years, the legislature's had a habit of passing bills that have not been very well thought out and then require time to go back and fix them in the future. And that just wastes more time. So.
And I'd say there's an even higher risk for that this session, because with COVID, understandably, there is limited access to the Capitol. So there is limited access for the public to come in and give feedback on these bills.
Yes.
And the way that the rules have been suspended, there's even less opportunity for the public to come give feedback, because these bills are going through so quickly. They've made it almost impossible for us to file amendments when we do find something wrong with one of the bills that's passing through. So, it's more important than ever that people do the legwork on the front end to try and make these bills as good as possible, so that when they get picked up, we eliminate as many of those unforeseen circumstances as we possibly can by just, one of the things I always ask about a bill, no matter how great it sounds, is who does this hurt? Who's against this bill and why? And then try to weigh all of those opinions before I even file the bill.
All right. Now, which committees are you on?
I am on banking and insurance, tourism, small business, and I'm forgetting to, no, okay, sorry. They just changed, and I'm really grateful that I get to be on quite a few. I am on the BR for transportation, which I'm really, really excited about. It will give me some budget experience, and transportation is such an important issue in our area. And then the other one that I'm on that I really love is tobacco settlement. Tobacco settlement's one that a lot of people haven't heard of. It's a happy committee, because what we do is we oversee the distribution of about $100 million a year of tobacco settlement funds. And those funds are distributed in 3 ways. They go 50% to agriculture and rural interests. They go 25% to cancer study and cancer cure development. And they go 25% to early childhood learning. So that's a really happy committee where we, honestly get to divvy out these funds that are so, so helpful to so many Kentuckians.
That's great. I'm going to have to find when that one's broadcast on KET and watch it, because I'm so used to watching the not quite as happy committee meeting.
Tobacco settlement's great. I learned, what's amazing about committees is that, sometimes there are different ways to think about it, right? I was on L&O before, and licensing and occupation is a really important committee, and it also has a lot of bearing in my area. And so I had the opportunity to move to banking and insurance this year, which I have a lot less personal experience with. And so, you can think of it as I should only be on committees like small business and tourism, which I have a lot of experience in. But I represent everyone in this district. So I'm always so happy for the opportunity to be on a new committee and to learn so much from it. This summer, I got to be on the agricultural committee, which was phenomenal. And I don't really have a lot of agriculture. I virtually have none in my district, aside from farmers markets and some community supported agriculture stuff. But I learned so much from that, so much about irrigation, so much about how we process meat in the state, things that are really, really important and honestly tie in pretty well to tobacco settlement stuff. So I'm always looking to be on as many committees as I can be and as many different kinds of committees as I can be, so that I am the most well-rounded and useful representative I can possibly be for my district.
Great. So on committees, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit, is with COVID and with the Republicans having the supermajority, I know there's been some really, shall we say, interesting rules set up for committee meetings this year. Could you kind of walk us through how many people are you getting to hear testify when an issue comes before a committee, and how's that working?
Well, let's think about be normally a really big issue. So if people think back to 2 or 3 years ago when teacher pension was huge, if there was a bill that came up before education, say for instance, on anything relating to education, that room would be filled. There would be the people who were actually sitting at the table to testify, but there would be hundreds of people walking around the Capitol and in that room with red shirts on to show you red for ed, and you knew where they stood. That can't happen right now. And also they're trying to limit committee meetings to just 1 hour. Part of that is so that the rooms can be sanitized between committee meetings. So, if we have 3 bills to hear in committee and we have our normal business of just, adjoining and talking, reading the minutes from the previous session, so on and so forth, that'll give us 15 minutes per bill. So sometimes there's just, 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 6 minutes per side per bill for there to be testimony for. And in that case, we may hear from 2 or 3 people, but the time is limited to whatever that block of time the chair has given them. So let's say, it's a bill and there's 10 minutes for each side to speak on it. Each side brings 3 people, each person speaking gets 3 minutes, and that's it. And then, that time also includes our questions. So we've not been able to ask as many questions. The public hasn't been able to have as much input. These bills are moving through so quickly that, by the time the public even learns of them, often there's no more time for input. Someone might write me and say, this is okay, but we need this amendment put on, and I don't really have that opportunity right now. And the other thing that's happening is that bills aren't being assigned to a committee like they normally are. They're sitting in committee on committees. So if there's an issue you really care about, like I have a mental health bill that I really care about,
right,
it still hasn't been assigned to a committee. Now, getting it assigned to a committee doesn't mean it would ever be heard. But if I knew that it was assigned to banking and insurance, then I could tell everyone, call everybody on the banking and insurance committee as fast as you can, as many times as you can. Tell them you want this bill heard. But when they sit in committee on committees, you don't even really know which committees to call. So we're left to, as the public, you're left to sort of guessing which committee you think is the best fit for a bill, and then calling the member of that committee, perhaps, if you have had time to learn about it at all.
Wow, that's really frustrating. One of the things we always try to do is help people engage and encourage them to contact their legislators. You know who your personal legislator is, but when you don't know what committee is going to hear a bill, like you said, it really it stifles that ability for the community to engage and let the legislators know what they want done or not done or changed. Absolutely. That is one of the biggest frustrations for me. And, I obviously understand we are in the middle of, let's hope a once in a lifetime, a once in 100-year health emergency in the state. And we need to keep everyone as safe as possible. So we all understand why we can't allow everyone into the Capitol right now. But this is supposed to be, a government for the people, by the people. And it's really not feeling like that right now, which is immensely frustrating to me. I think this is also a useful time for everyone just to kind of
better understand how to truly be a citizen activist and how the legislature works, so that you kind of can parcel out your year so that you are the most effective. So, we are in session right now, and we're in a 30-day session right now. So frankly, there's not much time left to file any new bills. We can only file bills through, I think it's February 11th right now, and we can only request new bills through February 2nd. So if a bill hasn't been requested, it can't be requested this year. It has to have already been requested and then filed by the 11th. And after the 11th, no new bills will come. Now, what ends up happening is that people start hearing about what's going on in the General Assembly, and they're like, oh, they should be passing this bill. And then they send us all these bill requests during the session, which I save. And then that's what I'll work on in the interim. So now is the time. I'm not saying people shouldn't be requesting bills right now. You absolutely can. And I will try to work on them in the interim if they're bills that I feel like serve my district well. But right now is the time to just start screaming from the mountaintop for or against things that you care the most about, because that's what we have. That's what we have to work with right now. In the hyper minority, we have PR. We have a narrative and a storyline that we can champion as loudly as possible. That's probably, frankly, the most effective we can be right now. And for people who care deeply about these bills, what we need is their voice amplified and repeated. So call the legislative hotline, email your legislators, email and call anybody who's on a committee that you think a bill you care about is going to go through. Handwrite letters. There's all of these great postcard writing groups that help get candidates elected. Well, there's no candidates to support right now. So postcard, Frankfurt, send those letters in. You can't be there in person right now. So you've just got to find all those other ways to make sure your voice is heard so loudly. And then once this session wraps up, that's the time to start writing all the legislators and saying, this bill needs to happen. We need to pass this. You guys passed this bill. Did you know that it's going to hurt us in this way? A really good example of that was the service tax from a couple of years ago that people didn't realize was going to force not-for-profits to charge service taxes too, which was unintended and had to be fixed. So that's what happens after March 31st. Start pushing everything that you care about for the next session through. The other thing that we haven't touched on yet that is so vitally important and so very unique to the General Assembly for 2021 is that we got to pass a one-year budget in 30 days on top of everything else that we have to get done, which is historic. It's never been done before. And it is happening effectively behind closed doors without very much input whatsoever.
Wow.
That's a shame.
That's frightening.
It is. So if you're making calls right now, call and ask for them to keep things in there that you care about, like the governor's $220 million that supports small businesses and not-for-profits that need it so desperately to stay alive right now.
Absolutely. I think you make an interesting point about after the session. I think a lot of people in Kentucky, they know that we have a part-time legislature, but I think there's this misconception that means that the legislators don't really do anything or much of anything between sessions. I think there's a lot of people don't understand, well, the committees continue to meet and you continue to do the research and write the bills. And that's when you prepare the bills like you were talking about. So that's why it's important to continue reaching out during those times. Speaking of a
ton of work takes place in that interim.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a ton of work takes place during that interim. It really does.
Yeah. So how much weight, I guess, do the green slips really carry? Does that really catch legislators' attention when they get those green slips from people contacting?
The volume definitely does. So we get them and they'll tell us, whether that person asks for every legislator to be contacted, whether they're truly our constituent, so on and so forth. But I'll tell you, I noticed, if I walk in one day and and this happens, and I have 250 unread emails because a group has come together to champion that day for something they care deeply about, I take notice. I can speak for myself, right?
Right.
I do my level best to respond to people who ask me a direct question. I do my absolute best to respond back to. Now, on those days that I get 250 emails that are, kind of on one bill, for instance, that I won't have the time necessarily to respond to everyone for. But especially if people have a question for me, I take the time to respond to them. And I do read every single email that comes to me. Now, a lot of those bulk emails will be the exact same email, just with the name change. So those I might not read repetitively over and over again, but I pay a ton of attention to it. I think I have a pretty good feel for my district, but I'm one person, and I have my own life experience. I know that I won as a Democrat, that this district voted for me, and I ran as who I am. So I have that support, knowing that the district knows who I am. They voted me in based on that, with the assumption that I would vote, on the issues that I talked about. But there are some other issues that, if it was just me voting for me, I might vote very differently than my district, but that's not my job. My job is to vote for my district. So those green slips tell me what the pulse of my district is. I also send out a lot of surveys. I'm like a big fan of surveying. And I understand that the people who respond to surveys tend to be the extremes on either side, but the number of them I get helps me to understand really where my district is. And, again, I'm not there to vote for Rachel Roberts. I'm there to vote for District 67. And sometimes Rachel Roberts and District 67 don't feel exactly the same way on a topic. And so, District 67 wins.
And you can't really have that face-to-face contact because of COVID. I mean, you can't have a town hall in the traditional sense or anything like that.
So
no, you can't. And you can do things online, and that's really helpful. But, you kind of start to notice when you're in the political world that the same people show up for a lot of this stuff. It's even worse in Zoom world. It's the same 10, 15 people each time, which is great. I love seeing those people. I've gotten to know them really well. But, and, for me, where I really got the pulse of my district was going to all the things. I mean, that's what I do. I go to everything. I mean, you guys know this. I go to every fish fry. I go to every bingo hall. I go to every street fair. I go to all of it because that's where I really meet everybody in my district, not just registered Democrats in my district, not just, politically active people in my district, but everyone in my district. And I don't have that opportunity right now either. So the surveys help. The green slips really help, I think. So yes, at least for me, Roberto, I think green slips matter a lot.
Good. I think they matter a lot too. So let's talk about maybe some issues or bills that you'd like to call out and bring to people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent today talking a bunch about House Bill 74, which is an all-payer database. So I posted about this on Facebook today. We're recording this on Sunday, so today I posted about it. I had a mammogram this week, my annual mammogram. And I walked into the doctor's office, and they were concerned for me because my last mammogram was on, I think, like February 6th of last year. And I went to get my mammogram on, let's call it January 28th of this year. And they said, it hasn't been a year. You may have to pay out of pocket for this. And that hadn't occurred to me. I'm in session all February. So in order to get this done when I'm supposed to get it done, I had to get it done that day. So I said, well, how much is it? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, can we figure out how much it is? Like, I don't want to spend thousands if I don't have to. And she said, well, it's not really thousands. I think it's just several hundred. I'm like, well, I don't know, So I called my insurance, and luckily it was covered. But I had already filed this bill. Another example of why we need this. If, for instance, I didn't have insurance, or I had a copay on my mammogram each year for some reason, or I wanted a kind of mammogram that my insurance won't cover, perhaps, I would like to be able to go online and see who charges what for that, just for the actual machine to take the test. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to know what the radiologist is going to charge to screen it, but I want to know how much this is going to cost. I can do that now, perhaps by making a whole bunch of phone calls, and maybe if I'm lucky, my insurance has something along those lines. But I think every Kentuckian should have that. One of the stories I tell about this is I have a friend who needed an MRI for his knee, and he had a high deductible insurance plan. Mm-hmm. So the closest hospital to him, the MRI in his knee was over, I believe, $3,000. Wow. So with his high deductible, that meant he was going to need to spend $3,000. It also happened to be the end of a year. And for most of us, our insurance, you pay your deductible and then it starts again on the first of the year. So he's like, well, I don't want to pay $3,000 for this and then have it not even serve my deductible moving forward. So he was able to shop around and found out an hour away from him, he could pay out of pocket for a $900 MRI. Same exact MRI, same thing on his knee. It wasn't, his insurance didn't have a partnership with this imaging center, but his out-of-pocket cost was going to be that much cheaper.
Wow.
These are decisions that Kentuckians are really having to make every day. When we shop for any purchase, much less a major purchase, we want to be able to price compare. So House Bill 74 would create an all-payer database for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so people could do just that. They could shop around for their care to inform themselves, and also, frankly, to build some competition here so that we start normalizing pricing. That really matters if you live in rural Kentucky. If you have a community health clinic in your area that's going to charge 3 times what it would cost you to drive to Lexington, and you have the ability to drive to Lexington, then you might make different choices. The other bill that I've really been talking on also in the health sphere is House Bill 74. This is a mental health parity bill, and my heart and soul is in this bill because I grew up. My father is he was a substance abuse counselor, and his private practice was in the ground floor of our home. So I grew up thinking that addiction services and mental health services were really normal. Like, everyone had a psychiatrist. All my dad's friends were psychiatrists or psychologists. That's what they talked about. They got together like literally every Tuesday night of my childhood, and they all like decompress together for their own mental health care because they're absorbing so much from their patients. Wow. So it wasn't really until I entered adulthood that I realized that other people's lives weren't like that they didn't have access to this, that there was stigma around it. So House Bill 77 creates a mental health parity where every Kentuckian with any kind of insurance, including Medicare and Medicaid, would be eligible for 100% coverage of a once-a-year mental health wellness check, so that we normalize mental health care just like you do when you go get your annual physical from your doctor every year. Right. If you're doing great, you're doing great. If you need some help, you have an opportunity for help. But regardless, you have this person, this mental health professional that's already in your life, so that when and if you actually need them for services, there's a lot less stigma around it. You're comfortable with someone already. You already know who to call. So that is House Bill 77. I don't know how much time we have here. I'm happy to go through all of them.
we can hit 1 or 2 more.
Okay. I have a couple that are sort of in the, in the police or legal realm. So the first one is House Bill 45. House Bill 45 says effectively that a worker can't be penalized, that they have to be granted leave from work to attend a court hearing where they were the victim. So, the Commonwealth of Kentucky voted on Marcy's Law this past year. Marcy's Law basically says that the victim of a crime has to be notified anytime anything is happening in the judicial system around their assault or their crime or whatever it is. So that can be a lot of stuff in the course of a year, especially if things are starting to ramp up towards trial and so on and so forth. So if you're only afforded, 2 weeks of vacation a year, or if you're an hourly worker who doesn't get any time off, then to be able to take the time away from your work to go to a court hearing or something for a crime where you were the victim can be really challenging. So this bill just says that employers must grant workers leave to be able to attend something along those lines, a hearing or any kind of basically any kind of a hearing around the crime that they were a victim of. And then the other one is the custodial safety bill, which is House Bill 81. Kentucky passed a few years back a law protecting inmates, saying that no one who is incarcerated can consent to sexual activity. What they didn't do, and where I saw a loophole here, was that law did not extend to people who are in police custody or detainment. So all this bill does is say that if you are in custody, you also can't consent. There isn't a power balance there that gives creates an equal playing field for actual consent in this way. There is a case out of New York where there's actually several cases where effectively someone, be it a woman or perhaps a trans person, will claim that they were raped by a police officer, and the police officer can effectively defend themselves by saying that that person is a sex worker and it was transactional. And it really doesn't leave the victim with anywhere to go, even if that is a completely unfounded and untrue accusation. So this bill would fix that and just add on to the bill that already exists. It says you can't consent if you're incarcerated.
No, that sounds like a really good fix to that, because like you said, there's a power imbalance, and with that kind of power imbalance, you can't adequately give consent. So
yeah.
No, that's a good fix, really good fix. So, well, those are definitely bills to stay on top of. Like we always tell people, one of the best places to keep track of what's happening with the legislature is the LRC, Legislative Research Commission. KFTC also has a really good bill watch program. You can go to KFTC and watch bills and what's happening through bills there. Then if somebody, I know, Rachel, you're on Facebook, and people can go there and follow you there, and you post a lot about what's going on in Frankfurt and different things. So that's a good place for people to keep track of what you're up to. So we
absolutely. So if people are interested, please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The handles are all the same. They're at Rachel, the number 4 KY. And then I also send out, I try to do it weekly, usually on Mondays, a weekly newsletter. And I put a ton of information in there. It's not like, it's not hard to read. I try to make it as digestible as possible. That just the high notes of here's what's happening. Here's what I want you to know about. Here's how you can take action, because I don't want to just tell you that these things are happening and not give you action steps. So I generally will try to say, here's a bill I care about. Here are the people you could call for it. Or, this year, frankly, there's been a ton of information in there about COVID. So I'll post I'll send out in the newsletter where people can get tested or how the vaccine rollout's going. So anybody can sign up for that on my website, which is Rachel for Kentucky spelled out.
Yeah, it's really good. I subscribe to that, to the newsletter. I think it's really good. I also subscribe to Buddy Wheatley's newsletter. He does a really great job as well. Both of you all do a really good job of keeping your constituents and any interested folks who sign up informed as to what's going on and what's happening. And it's kind of refreshing because it's actually providing information, and it's not just being deluged with requests for donations, which some candidates I sign up for, that seems all I get is requests for donations. I know it costs money, but it's nice to get information back as well. So anyway, yeah, I encourage everybody to sign up for that and stay updated on what's going on. You can also watch on KET. KET does a wrap up every night that the legislature's in session. That's really good. The KET app, you can watch those videos on demand, as well as the committee meetings in both the Senate and House of Representatives. So for the political junkies, this is the time of year in Kentucky.
I'm going to miss being in Frankfurt.
Yeah, no, this is our we have February madness, not March madness, but this is the time. If you want to be locked in, you can watch KET. It'll keep you entertained for the next couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. We really appreciate it. You have a good session, and good luck with everything you're trying to do. And I do want to give people a little tease that they might really want to pay attention over the next few days, because there might be some new bills coming out before that deadline that people might find interesting, right?
We'll pay attention.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're going to be putting out some really exciting bills on Tuesday, and then hopefully Wednesday or Thursday this week I'll have another big bill coming out. But I've been very busy in the last couple of weeks finalizing some bills I've been working on in the interim, and I'm really excited to get those out. And I'll just, end by saying thank you. I'm always so grateful to anyone who's willing to share information on politics, especially in Northern Kentucky, where we have, a real lack of coverage here in Northern Kentucky. So thank you for what you do. And everyone who's listening, please stay well. Please be kind to one another. And I cannot wait to get to see everyone in real life again sometime very soon.
Really true. Yes. And thank you for your service, Rachel. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Stay well, you too.
That's going to wrap it up for this week's Left in Kentucky. And hope everybody enjoyed the show. Well,
I really liked Rachel. She's very concise and clear about what's going on.
Yeah, Rachel's great. I'm a big Rachel fan. So
start looking for people in your community that sort of fit that profile, like Rachel. Business owners, people that are smart and willing to work hard. And if you don't have a Democrat in your legislative district, then encourage that person to run, because we need some good, down to earth people that are willing to work, willing to put in the work, and really help out our Commonwealth. So
definitely. And reach out to your legislators, call them, write them, email them. Get the
interpretive dance videos.
Yeah, send them YouTube videos. But no, contact them, call them, write them a letter, send them a postcard. I know
They work for you.
that really gets their attention because it's something different. So do that. And coming up next week, we have Buddy Wheatley, Representative Buddy Wheatley,
Yay.
who represents the northern part of Kenton County. So until then, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy. This is Roberto.
This is Amy.
Left in Kentucky, the podcast of Indivisible Northern Kentucky.